Yeah, to win anything at Cannes is an accomplishment as your first film, especially.
Yeah, that film does pretty well in India, and of course, then he makes the sequel, Aparajito, and takes that to Venice that next year, 57, and it wins the Golden Lion. Um, that's kind of unprecedented. You know, we gave you the sort of like, congratulations, you did a good job for an Indian film the year before, but here you're getting the top prize. You know.
They don't teach it well. But this week we're doing Charulata.
Yeah.
Charulata.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun pronouncing a lot of Indian names, but we're going to do our best.
That.
Because this is a good film.
It is. Yeah. Masterclass filmmaking.
Yeah, there was something I was going to say, and now I forget, of course.
Yeah.
But it was like...
Oh, no.
I don't even remember what it was. It was like, you might want to go to the experts for your film opinions, but some like it unauthorized.
And there you go.
That's us. We're unauthorized. I'm Jay Brooks Young.
And I'm Zach Domes.
And yeah, Charulata, talking about Satyajit Ray.
I'm interested to see or hear how what your thoughts were.
Yeah, this was really incredible in a lot of ways. I think pretty, like, right in those first, 5-10 minutes, I was really taken with it, especially kind of visually and the editing and stuff. It felt really, really contemporary. And yeah, there, like, as it went along, you could kind of see where it was going. You know, it took on the shape of a pretty conventional story, I guess, but told just in a really effective kind of almost wordless way. And I don't know, it's you got to think about it when this comes out in 64. Like, this looks like a lot of films now. There were not a lot of films at that time that looked and kind of felt like this, right? Like this, I don't know, all of it kind of comes together to feel very modern and very kind of real and emotional, I think.
I mean, one thing I can think of the cinematography of it, and in terms of it feeling modern, is the zoom-ins.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know, I don't think too many people had been doing such quick zoom-ins that he does in this. He applies to this. He's doing both handheld, which of course the new wave went into quite hard. He does a bit of that, and he's doing a lot of classic sort of Renoir-esque panning and blocking. But he also does those zoom ins, and so he knows when to do what for the story. He knows when to do a handheld, whether it's on a horse or on a swing. He knows when to zoom into an object to create more meaning. And that's really, you have a simple story, and yet you are really caught in it, even if it's sort of slow, because of the way, the way it's edited and the way it's shot.
Yeah, it's that zooming, and it's that, like, tracking with, the character, whatever the focus of the shot is. I saw someone compare this to Max Ophuls, who made Diary of an Unknown, or Letter from an Unknown Woman, and The Earrings of Madame de, and of course he loved his sort of camera movement. His camera is always sort of tracking one way or another. But yeah, it does feel modern. It reminds me more of like the later Kubrick stuff, kind of. the way that
Hmm.
the camera doesn't sit still. It's not you notice it. It's sort of noticeable. It's not really, it's not
Hmm.
trying to be subtle really, but it works. It's like I don't know. It's so intentional and motivated the way that he's using the camera. Um, because he's communicating so many things wordlessly that, like, you're focused on what he's saying with the camera in each scene, and not thinking too much about the style necessarily.
Right. I'm thinking too of that shot where she grabs her binoculars. I know there's a name for those um, that I can't remember.
Kind of like an
But
insert
yeah,
shot or something.
yeah, it's a panning shot
Oh yeah,
of her walking, holding the binoculars, and the shot is through something, and the camera's moving with her in perfect time. And that was quite stunning to see. It that is not something that we've seen much of at this point in '64.
no, yeah,
Reminded me a little bit, though this was different. It reminded me of Antonioni. He does a tracking shot like that with in La Notte with a couple that's in a car, and the camera just glides along with the car moving in the same speed, and it's raining outside. He does this. Ray does this though, and inside it's quicker, and it's shot through something. I felt like, yeah, I felt like the technicality of getting that shot at that point in time would have been very challenging, and so that shows that he's been in this game for a while, and sort of showing, him and the cinematographer are showing what they can do with that shot, but it also is impactful uh,
yeah, and
in
that's
terms of the binoculars meaning so much and all that stuff.
yeah, and I think that's right. The difficulty is important because I think a lot of this is harder than it looks. It's kind of
Hmm.
feels effortless, but yeah, a lot of these shots have to be like choreographed super deliberately. Um, I'm thinking,
Yeah, well, he places the camera on as she's swinging. He places the camera on her, facing her, in a very, and it's in a very organic way. You really feel like you're, sort of just looking at her as a portrait, kind of just like a classic portrait shot, a close up of her face, and yet she's swinging, singing this song, and smiling. You know,
yeah,
Meanwhile, I mean, what kind of size camera is this? What are we working with this here? And she's just sort of making this look like this is just a lovely little swing that she's doing. No big deal. There's a giant camera on me, and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I couldn't imagine in that moment how they get the camera in that position exactly.
yeah.
Um,
So that's incredible, and the acting was lovely, and the whole thing in that all these sequences. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's this kind of period piece story that he's telling, and I can take us through the characters. So, of course, our title character Charulata is the focus, and she's kind of this wealthy wife to this guy who owns and runs his own personal political newspaper. That's Bupati, her husband. Yeah, we're introduced to her, and then he tells her that, oh, I'm gonna have your brother come work for me, help me run the paper since he's been having trouble getting work as a lawyer, I guess. So her brother and his wife come to stay with them. And then right at that same time, his cousin, Amal, shows up. It's actually not immediately explained. Like he just kind of shows up, and I thought that might be her brother at that point, but then it kind of comes out in dialogue that that's her husband's cousin, her cousin-in-law. And we do get a lot of scenes about sort of him working in that newspaper, um, and what it means for him to be advocating sort of for Indian representation at this time of British occupation. But mostly it's about this relationship between Charulata, or just Charu, and the cousin-in-law Amal, and they're both sort of aspiring writers. Um, and Bupato wants his cousin to help her, figure out if she likes writing, if she wants to pursue it. And suddenly she's got kind of a kindred spirit in her life, and they realize this sort of connection that they have with art and all this stuff, and the way that that unfolds wordlessly is I don't know, really beautiful,
Yeah, yeah. It's lovely the way that it feels in this case, and this was the case too with the final part of his trilogy, where it's a solid narrative. It's That's not the case so much with his first film, Ray's first film, but with that third one of the trilogy, and with some others I've seen, he leans much more heavily into narrative, and he showcases his ability to, flow in an actual story, and yet at the same time maintain that slice of life feeling that we got very much with Pathar Panchale, that first one. Little touches here and there where the story's moving along, but then you have that long scene with them in the garden, and it's much more just sort of a scene, a kind of felt experience, especially when he's just writing and she's again looking around at the various things happening around her household with those binoculars. It's a wonderful way for those two characters to connect. It doesn't feel like it's too quick at all, obviously, but it's also not. It's a gentle pace, and you really feel like there's a strong connection there. Especially at first, you feel like there's like more of a platonic, poetic relationship happening.
Yeah. It's really interesting how you get keyed into her sort of feelings. Yeah, like that scene in the garden. You're seeing her kind of gaze at him, and you're projecting kind of all of what that could possibly be. What's she's feeling behind that gaze, and it's like, does she really appreciate him as an artist, as someone who wants to work at expressing this art, or someone that appreciates her and wants to kind of like bring her into that process, or but of course it does feel sort of romantic.
I think the detail that Ray does that gives it away, the romantic quality of it, at least in the beginning, the most is when he cuts to that other girl that's in the house. Was it his cousin's wife or something? Or his brother's wife?
Yeah.
It cuts to her looking down through the window, and she has this look of, she like kind of a look of like she knows what's going on there, because then we see from her point of view from the window up there, just them two in the garden, and you can imply that there's this other kind of connection forming. I will say that as lovely as that is, it also is, for what Ray is doing here, it does move that story along just a little quick. I don't know if that. Yeah. I don't know if I was to put on a critic's hat here, I could say, like, I don't know if that was absolutely necessary. Like, we can still get to that same point at the end, of seeing them, seeing how this relationship builds even further without that. I think it can be implied, and not only that, but wouldn't it be more interesting to come to that understanding with the characters ourselves rather than be given this hint from outside?
Yeah, that's the thing. He's in such control moment to moment of finding little ways to clue you into what's going on, that sometimes he'll go for the easier move that you don't really need. And you could strip some stuff back from this film, and it might work even better. especially like the subplot of her brother and the wife deciding that they're gonna steal the money, the paper's money later on and run off with it, which it feels like mechanically it sets up the climax and the way we're gonna resolve this relationship between the two of them. But I don't know. That's he's got like the one scene sort of in the beginning where he's in the paper's office and Bupati like tells him he's going to give him more responsibility and stuff, but then he's not really in the rest of the film. So when we get to him and his wife in their bedroom and he's talking about I'm a rotten husband, it's like, oh, I guess we need some kind of villain, some kind of like ratcheting up of conflict here in the second half.
Right. And am I mistaken in thinking or seeing that this was based on a story that had been written?
Yeah, I think it's a novel
or novella. And I don't know, I don't know what that looks like as an adapted screenplay. The other thing is it's based in 1870, and maybe it's just because the film itself feels modern, but definitely don't feel like I'm in 1870 by any means. I feel like I'm in 1970.
yeah. I do wonder, like, would the audiences at the time feel that or not?
Yeah, right.
Because the way they act feels very modern.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they tried to plant themselves into that past. But at the same time, given these criticisms, there's something about Ray's filmography and just what he does that easily can look past any of these flaws. I suppose.
I mean, I'd like, it's really interesting. Like, I don't know, you get this portrait of a woman with a rich inner life, with a sort of connection to, I don't know, like this really strong emotional bond to the world around her. Like she's reaching out to try to like feel things, and it's a very restrictive world for women at that point. And it's kind of it's beautiful to focus in on her, and she, like, this journey she goes on of feeling like she has some kind of purpose in this relationship with Amal, and her finding the inspiration to write the story that she writes, but that comes at the expense of her role in her marriage and all of that. Like that's pretty incredible to depict.
Yeah, it's reminiscent of Little Women a little bit, just in terms of her publishing something and having to do it in secret to some extent, although she can publish her name. And then also, he not only does he showcase all of that, he also showcases the politics between India and Britain and what all that looked like. And yeah, he's established at this point, so he must feel like he can do those various things. And I think that has to be one of the reasons why it is regarded, is because of what he's doing with showcasing the interior life of a woman at that time and of today. And very much leaning into that.
I forget which film it was, because it wasn't this one, but it was one of the films around this time that, I read something that said it's the first film where he shows a kiss. That's the kind of level of sort of, I don't know, restriction that we're under in like Indian film at this time. I would say, what the kind of allowances are.
Yeah.
So like he's always reaching out showing things that are a little risky.
Yeah, and in a way that is obviously very different than Bollywood and the other films coming out of India at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, her brother runs off with the money, um, and Bhupati is heartbroken over this, and it's when he is sort of confiding in Amal and talking about um, how this kind of breaks his heart because, he couldn't imagine that someone they put that trust in would betray him. We're seeing it kind of play uh, in Amal's head, and in Charu too. We're cutting to her; she's like listening to this, but they're both kind of having this realization of that they are sort of breaking his trust as well, the way that they're having this sort of emotional affair. And that's when Amal decides to leave, and there's the first letter they leaves, and Charu and Bhupati go to the beach, but when they come back and they get that second letter, and it's sort of this confirmation that he's not coming back. That's when Charu breaks down, and Bhupati happens to see it and realizes, kind of what's been going on, and, leaves. He's riding around in the carriage, kind of heartbroken, and that very end is him coming back and her reaching the hand out, and the hands like just about meet, and it freezes. And what went through your head at that point? I was like, oh, there's no way the Criterion froze, right? But I had to double check, and I was like, no, he did the freeze frame, and then like a couple different like cuts to static images, and it like shows you the wide shot, and I mean that's crazy, right?
Yeah, that was wild. Sort of. I'm thinking of 400 Blows.
Yeah,
freeze frame at the end.
of course.
I'm also thinking like then cutting to a few other photos, essentially. Freeze frames of her and him, and then them together in the space. That was actually the first time I felt like we were in 1870. Just because it was like an old photo, and I felt like like I was remembering again that this is something that could have taken place at that time. For some reason, that just made it feel older, I guess, because it's like an old photo. So
Yeah.
but yeah, that shook me for sure. I was like, what does this mean?
Yeah, showing you the other different shots. It feels like you're watching like an archival documentary or something all of a sudden.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's just like,
Yeah.
they're frozen in time, and all of a sudden we're on the outside of their story.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. That's a really cool touch at the end. And it's not just it's not just the 400 Blows freeze frame. Like he does his own thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it felt a little contrived right there at the end that like Bhupati's gonna find out about their sort of emotional affair just because he overhears her crying over the letter. And it's like I don't know how you quite get there, how you make that feel organic. I kind of butted up against that a little bit, but I don't know. It's a you kind of know where it's going, but it ends really strong.
Yeah, and I think the experience that I had, at least with the way that is shown, is that I'm left with this feeling of unspoken desire, right? Unspoken emotional communication. Like this is yet again a couple and a relationship where the people have never learned to talk to one another about what's going on for themselves. And so you have this hand reaching out at the end, the backdrop to that is a lot of a lack of truly understanding and truly listening to where each other where they're at, um, which has been shown so many times in various films. That same idea, and to me, I know what you mean, but I think what I felt very deeply was just the real silence and the real distance between them. Still, that's probably what that is. That freeze frame with the hands is that is their distance. Sure, they may grab hands, but the truth of it is that that freeze frame is actually embodies what they'll probably always be. It's probably that's their fate, is to be disconnected.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
yeah, kind of
his
reaching out.
his mind is always going to be elsewhere, as it has been the whole time with the business, and now with this new business idea they have. And he gets taken over by that, and he forgets what's going on with her.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing. It doesn't resolve cleanly into like, oh, he's just one way and she's another way, and they can't. There's no compatibility there. It's like, I'm glad that he's sort of shown throughout the film of, he wants his cousin to help her, foster her artistry. He wants her to feel fulfilled, but yeah, he's always going to be distracted, and he's always going to be not able to sort of connect with her in that way. It's left complicated, and it's not an easy sort of like, oh, they obviously shouldn't have been together.
Yeah, so this will be a segue from this film, is just to say Amal's character was fantastic. I really like that guy, and he was also in the last of the trilogy,
The World of Apu, right?
Yeah, The World of Apu, and he was also in The Goddess, I think, which the translation, the Indian word is Devi.
Yeah.
He was in that as well. Really great, kind of joyful character that he portrays, and I was glad to see him in this one as well.
Yeah,
he does a great job in Apu's world.
yeah. I still gotta catch up with that. This was my third Ray. I've only watched Pather Panchali, and then the second of the Apu films, the Aparajito. And I think this is a lot of repeat cast from The Big City, which came out the year before. You just watched that, didn't you?
I did. I did watch that ahead of watching this, just to add one more to the catalog. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I mean, he's one of a kind. He's such just natural talent as a filmmaker. It's crazy because he hits it out of the park with his first film. He was working for a while as an illustrator. He did a lot of he drew a lot of covers for novels, and some of those novels he adapts into films later on. But he kind of loved film throughout his life. He started like a film society to watch stuff in Calcutta, I believe. He gets to meet Jean Renoir when Renoir comes to India to make The River, and supposedly does some location scouting with him. What I wanted to run down for you was actually his sort of history going to the big festivals, because I will say we are often pretty Eurocentric in these conversations. Partially that's what's available when we research or we read stuff here and there. So that's what's easier and kind of more likely for us to learn along the way. But it's also partially just that at this time, film is such a commercial enterprise, and it was so much more established and entrenched in those countries, and of course, there's like, the fact that for a long time, Europe, those countries in the West have, exploited the global South and been able to establish kind of a cultural hegemony. So it's like you want to go to those festivals in Europe when they really get going post World War II, because that's the center of the film world, and you might hook up with a producer who's going to help you make a film in the future, or you might be able to go back to your country, and even if a film doesn't do well there, you can say, oh, well, we did good at the festivals, we'll be able to sell this, in distribution in other countries, all these sorts of things. So it's like, um, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's still important at this time to think about how, the standing of these filmmakers internationally, and that largely means like what happens for them at these festivals. And in running down this, I want to kind of dispel anyone who would watch this film or just like start to get into Ray's films and imagine that, he must have just been off in India. No one knew about him for a long time. And, it might have been decades before a Sight and Sound list, featured him, or people really talked about him in Europe or in the U.S. or whatever. But that's not the case. And it was kind of fortuitous that the MoMA was like setting up an Indian art exhibit right when he is working on Pather Panchali, trying to get that finished. And they see like some of the pre-release footage and invite him to come bring that to the MoMA in New York when he finishes, and he's able to do that. It shows without subtitles. It's kind of a rough like go for, but some people see the artistry of it, and he ends up from MoMA in 55, takes Pather Panchali to Cannes in 56, and it wins this award for Best Human Document, which sounds kind of like a patronizing award, like, oh, wow, an Indian director made this beautiful film. Congratulations. But, that's, it's getting recognized at least, right? And I think in an earlier episode, I think I incorrectly attributed to Godard that quote about I don't really want to watch like peasants eating with their hands or whatever. I think Truffaut was supposed to have been the one that said that, but like, there's a lot of these people are going to look down on Indian film and just films from other countries,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to win anything at Cannes is an accomplishment as your first film, especially. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. That film does pretty well in India, and of course then he makes the sequel, Aparajito, and takes that to Venice that next year, 57, and it wins the Golden Lion. That's kind of unprecedented. We gave you the sort of like, congratulations, you did a good job for an Indian film the year before, but here you're getting the top prize. There was a Nicholas Ray film, there was a Kurosawa, a Visconti showing at Venice that year. Like, that's when people are really taking notice of how amazing Satyajit Ray is. I think he takes the next film to Cannes in 58. Doesn't win anything there, but Music Room, I think in 59, goes to the first Moscow International Film Festival and wins like a best score or best composing award. You really liked the Music Room, right? When you watched that?
I did. I think that it's definitely the slowest I've seen by him, and maybe the darkest. Probably
Oh.
is probably safe to say so far that I've seen. I mean, dark for him is existential. I guess maybe the most existential. Um, it's not. I wouldn't say it's my favorite of his, but and I've said this to you though. It's one that haunts me in a certain kind of way, just in a kind of existential way. Really good. Worth another look. When you think of his filmography, we tend to think of the trilogy and possibly this one, and so that one may not be thought of as often. And I don't think it deserves that. I think it deserves to be um, thought of just as often as the trilogy and this one.
Yeah, I love that. I think, yeah, you're seeing it kind of film after film. There's always something to reckon with um,
Mm-hmm.
that he is kind of looking at. So yeah, that does get recognized at Moscow, and then it's the next year, 1960, the finale, The World of Apu, wins their like top prize, quote unquote, at London.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean that's right. He's sort of Pather won an award, the second film won an award, World of Apu wins an award. Like people are taking recognition of his work. In '61, he's part of the jury at Berlin that year. And that's the year that La Notte wins the Golden Bear. That's fun to think about. Satyajit Ray's part of that jury that gives Antonioni the award. I think '62 he takes Devi the Goddess to Cannes. Doesn't win anything there, but '63 he is back at Moscow on the jury for that festival, and that's the festival that awards 8.5 the big prize. So it's like every time, I'm not sure if he's going every single time, but probably most years he is going to these festivals and being involved, seeing these films. People are seeing his films, Charulata supposedly gets rejected by Cannes that next year, so he takes it to Berlin and he wins the Best Director award, and Godard with Alphaville wins the Golden Bear that year. But he's right there. He's right there next to him. I think Godard said that he absolutely loved this film. So like,
wow.
Yeah, it's sort of a 10-year run leading up to this where he's not just an institution in Indian and Bengali film. He is a big part of what's going on internationally in film.
Wow, that's amazing. He won their hearts over the French.
Yeah,
Well, everyone's, but yeah, that's great to hear about the Godard thing. Yeah,
that's
the fact that he kept getting recognized for each film he did. I think I read something about the music room where everybody was anticipating, had high expectations for it, and that had to have been the case if you've gotten some recognition for several films in a row that you've done ever since your very first one. The expectations are high, and then each time it gets awarded again. It gets appreciated again. But I can't imagine going to see a film that would have been high stakes.
Yeah.
And to be coming from a place, this large country where I don't no one else from there is doing that kind of thing. So it's an astonishing.
No, not to that kind of recognition. From what I saw, it would be one director bringing one film, and then they're not showing up again at the other festivals.
Yeah.
He becomes a regular.
You had mentioned the music being awarded in Devi, or was it the music room?
For the music room, yeah.
And I don't think that was the most famous guy who plays sitar, the sitar maestro. Anyways, he does his first 3 films. He does the trilogy, and
that's Ravi Shankar.
Yeah, Ravi Shankar. The fact that he was able to work with Ravi for his first film, he must have had a way of connecting what that does, that shows me that he had a way of connecting with true artists. I think Ravi had a little bit of work with film at some point in his life, but um, as a first time filmmaker, you're connecting with this kind of expert, long running, you know, the world's best sitar player, probably, or at least the most well known. And you have some conversation with him, and you say, "Hey, look, I'm going to make a film. It's going to be my first
Yeah,
film. Do you want to
yeah,
play for it?" I mean, there must have been such a genuineness to him, not just as an artist, but as a person. Uh,
yeah. He was
so,
absolutely driven, and yeah, it must have come across like this guy's got an artist's soul, and he's gonna find a way to realize this. I think he had done some drawings, some sketches before filming Pather Panchali, kind of storyboarding that out in his own way. Um,
mhm.
but yeah, you've got some sketches in a dream, and you're going to all these different artisans, um, musicians, and cameramen, and production people, and saying, this is what we're gonna do. This is what I see, and we can get there. You know, um,
Mhm.
yeah, it's incredible to kind of start from nothing, kind of start outside of the film industry, and then become the sort of the biggest star, or maybe not the biggest star, but sort of the most respected filmmaker.
Mhm.
um yeah, he's a really incredible, and every film so far that I watch, I'm surprised, and I'm really enjoying working through his stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a part of me, as I start the film, it's definitely a part of me that wonders, is this the Ray film that I'm gonna dislike? Because it's being pieced together slowly each time. It's always starting gently, you know, reminiscent of Renoir to some degree, even Ozu in certain ways. And yet, like you said, there's always a bit of surprise, a little bit of a turn that you wouldn't expect here and there, and which is just delightful every time. And it catches you and it brings you in, and by the end, it's always impactful every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the big city, I will say that, and I wrote this on Letterboxd, there was a couple shots inside of an office with a green screen city in the background
Mm.
to give the illusion that this office was high up and you could see the street below and some tall buildings, as though you were in a big city. Um, but it's not done perfectly, so you can tell based on the kind of movement of the background, and the office is not quite in line, so you can tell. And I get why they're doing it, and you understand why they would do the same thing for shots inside of a car. But with that, I did feel again that definitely wasn't needed, and it definitely took me out of it more than any other uh, films that I've seen by him, because it felt more studio based, it felt more set based, and I was very delighted to see that he did not do anything like that with Charulata.
Yeah,
Very,
yeah, and I believe this
very
was
pleased.
all the interiors were sets, but it's all done
Mm-hmm.
really well, really seamlessly. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, we talked about the camera work, but like the lighting too seems
Mm-hmm.
really naturalistic, and they make it feel that just a little. It contributes a little piece to this whole vision of a real kind of life, a real emotional story that you can just be transported into.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm thinking of that now, like with his first film, Pather, Panchali, and all the others. I don't know what film he's using or what lens exactly he's using, because even outside shots has a very um, soft and uh, kind of evenly lit feeling to them. And he could be in harsh light, and in those forests of India, it's dappled light, so it's kind of difficult to shoot. You know, you
Yeah.
have it's harsh lighting and it's dappled. It's not like you're in dense shade, so that it's even lighting. You're in harsh, dappled, kind of contrasty light, and yet he made it work somehow. And I don't know what the cinematographer is doing there to make that look so good, but somehow it looks good. It almost looks documentary feeling, because it does seem like it's sort of shot live and on location, and like they had no control. Like in so even though the shots interior are on sets outside, it's on location, and so it feels real and
Yeah,
all that.
yeah. I think he talked about his love of bicycle thieves and some of those other neo-realist films, and people have
Mm,
connected that to Pather Panchali. That yeah, he's trying to depict something that feels like real life, which was a total departure, right, from what Indian film was.
yeah, and with Pather Panchali, he's in a village most of the time somewhere. It does seem like that's an actual village of some kind, or some sort of house that he's working with there. If not, it's made to look real, and it does. And in terms of the softness, again, that I don't know what that is, but that quality is it's delightful to see. It's like there's not like a the lighting is not never like moody. It isn't. It isn't your typical kind of like contrast with deep shadows, and with somebody in the frame just sort of lit up against a dark background, or what it might look like there. It's overall very soft, and overall very yeah, evenly lit. And yeah, there's something quiet and gentle about that I don't know, gives a calming experience.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny talking about that, talking about the sort of realism of Pather Panchali and then this film, and then we didn't even mention
Mm-hmm.
the moment when she has the sort of inspiration to write her story, and we get this sort of fantastical vision or something that's going on in her head.
Yeah.
It's like superimposed with the image of her face, and you're like tracking
Yes.
across these like people that she remembers from her village. Um,
Yes.
that like what a fantastical flourish that you could imagine from like an Eisenstein film or something. Like it's so it's so I don't know. It's incredible. But
Mm-hmm.
he picks the spot to kind of hit the high note, to kind of take you outside of the realism, um, and it's a really
Mm-hmm.
cool moment.
Yeah, well, it comes after that whole opening sequence, which is more than 5 minutes long. I don't exactly know, but it's a silent, no dialogue, just her walking around this large estate that she lives in, and there's a sort of sense of mundanity with that sequence for sure, right? Like she's bored, she doesn't have anything to do, and yet not long after that sequence, we're shown that scene that you're describing, and it gives us this contrast between like what her life is on the external, which is sort of this vast empty space where her husband's gone most of the time and she's sort of bored, and then this internal space that's full of visions and memories and ideas and all of these kinds of things, and the two couldn't be any different. And he shows that through his cinematography.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great film.
Yeah, and I was thinking this is your first like really narrative based Ray film.
Well,
You've
the
got to
second
catch.
the second Apu film too.
Yeah, it is, but that third one is like he really goes into the
Mm,
narrative more than he did I think there's a larger. I think there'd be a larger difference. I would say.
No,
Or maybe he just comes into it more. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this film feels incredibly modern. This is like an indie film that someone would make today. Put this next to
yeah.
What was that film last year? All We Imagine Is Light. Put it next to that. Like, you know, they fit right next to each other.
I was thinking of that film actually. That's great. That's a good one.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna go from India to France next week, and his buddy that he was at that 65 Berlin with, Jean-Luc Godard. We're gonna look at his film Pierrot Le Feu.
Another color. Yeah.
Yeah. Another big color film for him.
Some more color.
Boy, I can't wait to unpack my feelings about him.
Yeah, you've been reading Everything is Cinema by Brody, so interested to hear all of your thoughts on that one. That'll be, I don't think an hour can contain that, so that'll be a tough one for you to do.
Yeah, I'll try to distill it down, but
right.
I've been looking forward to talking about him on the pod.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Look for that next week, and in the meantime, you can go read more of our thoughts on Letterboxd, which is linked in the description.
Yes, and I've got some lists on there too. I'm gonna add a list for the movies that we talk about on there.
Yeah,
pretty soon. So check that out.